Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at Pitafi World, and with me are Farrukh, Pitafi and Faisal. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two stories. One, in terms of what is going on internationally, especially in the Gaza Strip, and the kind of brutalities that unfortunately we have seen unfold in Israel. This is important, especially in the way that things have escalated since the surprise attack launched by Hamas over the weekend, which has sparked a lot of retaliatory attack by Israeli forces as well, including airstrikes, which have been continuing since then. Resultantly, a number of people have lost their lives on both sides, and international community has called for de-escalation of what is going on immediately in order to save the people who are now stuck in a huge humanitarian crisis, which has been increased by a total siege that has been declared in the Gaza Strip, in which a number of people, of course, have been blocked, and there is no access to food, water or gas or electricity, and this, of course, is a huge problem. The UN has declared this as a violation of international law. It has called for de-escalation on both sides, and has called for how whatever action is taken that hampers the survival or the way that civilian lives are impacted is something that is against international law and must be stopped. However, the kind of escalations that we have seen since the attack over the weekend by Hamas on Israeli forces is something that, of course, is questionable, and whether or not this is something then at this point where it is today can actually move towards de-escalation. We have seen tough comments coming in from both sides, which seem to be going towards a no end and are ready to take this war to whatever conclusion that it may go to, as long as they're able to respond to each other in the way that we have been seeing. Unfortunately, however, this is causing a lot of pain and suffering on ground, with a number of people whose lives have been impacted, of course many who have already lost their lives. This is important also in terms of the kind of impact it's going to have on the way that this particular issue within Israel is also going to impact other nations, and then, of course, the possibility of this escalating into a war-like situation beyond the borders of Israel, especially in its relationship with Iran. We're also going to be taking a look at the US's statement, where the President Joe Biden has talked about rock-solid support towards Israel, and has said that help is going to be provided as much as it can to Israel. And this is important, especially in terms of what this means on ground, in the way that we're going to be seeing things evolve in the coming days. We are going to be exploring the situation at hand and try to understand the way that this can now be resolved and move forward, and how best to protect the people who are suffering, and what is going to be the correct response by the international community in the days that come, and then understand what exactly it is that needs to be done on ground. That is going to be our focus in the first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to look at what is happening in Pakistan internally, where we've seen that a provincial apex committee was held in Balochistan with the caretaker Prime Minister and the Chief of Army Staff also in attendance. And a number of areas have been specified by the caretaker Prime Minister, talking about how the progress made by the Balochistan government is something that is appreciated, and that there will be a support from the federal government towards the province, and that all the efforts that are coming through from the SIFC will then trickle down into Balochistan as well. He also briefed the province about the kind of measures that are being taken in terms of targeting any illicit activity within the province as well, especially also in terms of smuggling and in terms of crimes related to law and order situation and terrorist activities. This is, of course, something that has already been talked about at a national level in the Apex Committee meeting as well. And with this particular provincial committee meeting, we're also going to be then taking a look at the targeted approach that is being taken for the peaceful situation in Balochistan, and how exactly will then the national security plan and the way that the revised policies have been put forward are going to take shape in the province. That is going to be our discussion at the end of the show. Of course, Farrukh and Faisal are going to be with me in the discussion. We've also been joined online on our first segment by Najam Saqib, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much for joining us, Ambassador Sab, and being a part of the discussion. And I'm going to start with you with reference to what is happening. There is, of course, a lot of concern that is being raised and is being talked about by the entire international community as to what is going on. And most of them have been calling for de-escalation of the crisis that is going on at the moment. And whatever, of course, may be the current situation, we want to, of course, take a look at it in terms of what has been going on previously as well, whether or not where we stand today is something that can be looked into to move towards de-escalation in a manner that perhaps one would expect, given the fact that this is something that is impacting the situation for quite some time, and that this was perhaps something that maybe the Israeli forces also were unprepared for. Given the situation and perhaps the way that we have seen retaliatory fire coming in through, do you expect that any possibility of de-escalation can actually be looked at the moment? Ambassador Saab, are you with us? Right, Ambassador Saab, given the situation at the moment as to what is going on, of course the international community has been calling for de-escalation, but what has been continuing since the weekend, of course, it seems that both sides are not going to be moving in a direction towards de-escalation, and it has been made clear in terms of their actions and the statements given by both sides as well. We're going to be, of course, taking a look at all of this in a historical sense as well, and in the context of what has been going on with Palestinians for quite some time. But at this point, I want to understand whether call for de-escalation is something that can actually be expected or hoped for, and whether or not there can be any move towards that given the current scenario.
Thank you very much. I have a sad news that begin with Pakistan, Sri Lanka.
Right, Ambassador Saab, unfortunately I'm unable to hear you properly, so we're going to try and connect with you once again, and then I'm going to take your response on the matter. But Farrukh, let me take your opinion on the same question as well. It seems, of course, at the point that we are standing today is unfortunately somewhere where, of course, there is call for de-escalation. There is a lot of people commenting on how so many lives, of course, have been affected. But it seems that in the way that the situation seems to be deteriorating on such a fast scale, is the possibility of de-escalation even on the horizon?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the opportunity. I think that for now we can safely say, unfortunately, that there doesn't seem to be any chance of de-escalation. There's a lot to unpack here, particularly regarding, since our first advertised topic is regarding the siege of Gaza Strip. So let us first address that. People, innocent citizens being deprived of water, electricity, basic amenities, life-saving drugs, food. This is not acceptable under international law. And I think that it actually shows you what exactly has happened in Israel. Israel's current government is in power because of its ability to play on paranoia and fear and anger, right? This is a hard right government, and Benjamin Netanyahu was a part of a vicious cycle of elections and re-elections in which he would actually be failing to form government. Every time that happened, he opened war with Gaza Strip, and because of that we have seen that he has been able to finally form a government which is again in trouble. So the intelligence failure that happened, the way Hamas went silent and then attacked, that actually calls to question the security paradigm of Benjamin Netanyahu. When you have actually when you have egg on the face, then of course you actually resort to brute force, and that is at play right now. I think indiscriminate bombing of any vulnerable population is wrong, and that is what we are seeing right now. Having said that, now let us talk about the whole situation, this kind of symbiosis that exists between Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas. Earlier I mentioned that Hamas, Benjamin Netanyahu always starts attacking Gaza whenever he is in political thick soup, especially because he is facing corruption charges as well. So what happens is that every time Hamas actually provides him with some kind of pretext, whenever he is weak, there can be this possibility that both sides actually believe that as long as the hardliners are fighting, the mainstream people, the left people, the moderates have no chance. PLO doesn't have any chance of forming government in Gaza, or for that matter in Israel. The moderates cannot come to power. But there is also a possibility that there might be some kind of conspiracy. But eventually the kind of attack that took place, that started off this whole thing, is also something that we have been struggling with as well.
Yeah.
Attack on civilians, no matter how much you disagree with the population which was attacked, is condemnable, and it cannot be approved. And I think that is the saddest part, because most of those violent acts were videotaped. So they are going to actually breed or keep on spreading or proliferating hate towards the other community. They are going to be putty in the hands of both Islamophobes and anti-Semites all over the world for generations. And I hope, I certainly hope, and I pray that de-escalation takes place. But then both sides have to actually call out the people who have started a war that is going to impact the common citizens to such an extent that the cycle of violence and cycle of extremism doesn't seem to end.
Right. We've connected once again with the former Ambassador Najam Saqib Saab, who's joined us on telephone line now. Ambassador Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Salam.
Right. Ambassador Saab, so we're talking, of course, about what is going on in the Gaza Strip and in Israel at the moment. And, of course, since the attack on the weekend, there has been a lot of incidents that have taken place, sparking a lot of comments from the international community as to what is going on. Of course, majorly, everyone is calling for de-escalation. But at this point, of course, we also would like to understand, given the way that we have seen the attacks actually begin by Hamas, and as Farrukh was pointing out, the kind of actions that have been taken against innocent civilians, of course, puts us in a very difficult spot as to how exactly do we proceed forward. And with the retaliatory fire coming in from Israel as well, and then the total siege on the Gaza Strip as well, it is just adding to the misery of the people involved and, of course, the people on ground that are suffering on both sides. And I want to then understand that in the way that this has been carried out, it seems that no one would like to back off or have any sort of face saving in terms of what is going on, and any sort of reason perhaps that they would like to go. One would hope for that humanitarian reason should be enough, but we haven't seen that happen in previous cases as well. How exactly would then this situation be handled?
Thank you, Sana, and salam to Farrukh and Faisal. It's always a pleasure to be a part of your show, but right now it's a very sad and bad situation arising out of Gaza. Before I answer your question, I would like to share a sad news for American diplomacy. Nikki Haley, their permanent representative in New York, she wanted to thwart the resolution floated by Kuwait to protect the people of Gaza. She could not, and instead she floated her own American resolution, which was voted only by herself. And perhaps it is a record that any resolution proposed by America was not supported by even one single member of the Security Council. So it's a very sad day for the American diplomacy. Now I come to your question. The thing is that right now, if we are talking about de-escalation, we are living some kind of a fool's paradise. Why I'm saying that? Because the battle lines were drawn already. The defense minister of Israel said that it's going to be a long drawn war. The army chief of Israel said that the armed forces of Israel are absolutely ready for any, war may take many months or years. Then Netanyahu, the first day he said that the people of Israel should know that we are at war. It's the fourth day, and I don't see any, chance of any de-escalation right now, because somehow I have a feeling, and all those people who have their, fingers on the pulse of this Middle Eastern interior and internal situation, they know that perhaps Hamas and the Palestinians, they thought that, the Saudi deal brokered by the United States of America, it has actually, made the whole Palestinian movement somehow redundant, and nobody was looking at them as such. So Hamas has achieved at least one goal, to tell the world that, the Palestinian issue is still there, the two-state issue, and all those promises that the international community made to them. Secondly, there is a conspiracy.
If I may ask a follow-up question here, and I understand in what sense you're saying that, but I want to then know whether or not this actually sort of impacts negatively the movement by the Palestinians, since of course in the way that we have seen civilians being targeted by Hamas, of course they have put themselves on the map, so to speak, and there is a discussion happening around what is going on over the Palestinian issue, and they've made themselves visible. But have they also hampered the movement and the rights of the people?
I don't think so. In these days, you can't say that for the last 40, 50 years, since 1948, for instance, if the Palestinian people are fighting for their right to have a state of their own, and the world has only been extending promises and more promises. So I think it is a turning point, in the history of Middle East, particularly in the context of the Palestinian issue. Yes, there are other factors also, like, for instance, I heard one of the panelists saying about Hamas and whether it was actually an attack by Hamas or it was forced, like the Russian Federation, for instance, went into Ukraine, and there were two distinct theories. Russia was actually forced by the Western powers to go into that extent, and similarly as far as Hamas is concerned and its all-out attack is concerned. So there are two distinct theories regarding this issue that it will have some negative impact on that. I don't think so, simply because I think the Hamas people and particularly the Palestinians, they thought that it was time to call a spade, and there was no other way. There was no negotiating table. Nobody was actually paying any heed to them, particularly, if you see the desecration of Al-Aqsa Mosque time and again, and the kind of treatment meted out to their women, and of course, the siege of Gaza. I'm surprised to, see that, people are saying that, Gaza is going to be under siege. Gaza is already under siege. Gaza, if you see the waters, on the left-hand side of Gaza, or you see the air routes, etc., they are all controlled by Israel. Now Israel has a carte blanche, as such as they say, to do whatever it wants to do. And this time, since reportedly the attack was initiated by the Palestinians and not Israel, so the world community, international community, would like to give this kind of a blank check to Israel to go to any extent. Now, if you ask me, when is this going to be over, or, de-escalation, I don't see. But when is it going to be over? I think there will be one of the two scenarios that this war will be over. Number one, that Israel achieves all its stated targets, damaging, destroying, the people of Palestine, number one, or miraculously something happens and Hamas, like the old, Hezbollah, Hamas has the capacity, or it has an edge over Israel in the war. So one of the two situations, because I don't see, the Security Council or Russia or China or the United States of America, and for that matter, the European powers, they are actually interested in, putting a halt to the war. Yes, China and, Russia are vocal. They want this, war to end. But what about those powers who are actually, for instance, UK, France, the United States of America? So I'm afraid we'll have to see, the TV screens for many, many more days to come and see. And, people are counting how many shaheed and how many people have died and how many buildings, have been destroyed. One important factor here is that we in Pakistan, we love Palestine. We have not recognized Israel just because of, there is some sentiment attached to it. But the ground realities are telling us something else. So that is why the government of Pakistan, when its press release came, it was a very, very carefully worded, statement in which, for the first time, I saw that the word Israel was missing from there. And it was a very carefully, calibrated statement in which Pakistan said that we are going to be for the peace and we want, 1967 borders, etc., to be restored. And we want, the world to, actually Pakistan urged the international community to stop this war.
Right.
And
So Ambassador Saab, you think it should not have been carefully calibrated given the situation? Do you think that there is a black and white here that Pakistan could have opted for?
Of course, it was the time that we were, there was a discussion going on whether or not we should go ahead and recognize Israel. The stakes were very high. And there was, the moot point, the debate was, should we or should we not? And then suddenly this thing happened, and, the caretaker Prime Minister was very, very clear when he stated that, we are not going to recognize Israel. Even the Foreign Minister and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all my colleagues are of the view. Of course, it was a carefully calibrated statement, and it should have been like that. The point that I was going to bring home was that right now, it is the time to see how best we can, play our role to stop this war without even offering any material or military support or whatever. Because we are trying to mend ways, with the United States of America, and we have seen our stand on the Ukrainian war, how we had to pay for that later on. So we had to be careful, and we are careful. My point, would be that please, we should not reiterate our positions time and again, and everyone, in the government, for instance, when there is a podium, there is no need to repeat the cliches. There is no need to speak more than it is. So I would like the Foreign Office to give all the ministers and all those people who are asked, this question that what is Pakistan's point of view, they should be a two-liner or three-liner saying that this is what, Pakistani government wants, and as follows. Why?
Right.
Because the more you speak, the more you make mistakes. So I would suggest that we should just keep away, keeping our stance, very, very clear that we want a two-state solution, number one. Number two, we want this war to stop. And number three, that casualties on both sides, we don't want any casualties for that matter. So to me, we are very clear in our principal stand, and there is no change in Pakistan's principal stand on the two-state solution or the Palestinian cause.
All right. Faisal Ambassador Saab also spoke about the total siege, which, of course, the UN has declared against international law. And he made a valid point about how there has been siege before as well. Of course, there is a complete cutoff of a lot of resources that has been announced. But in all practical senses, it has always perhaps been there. And we haven't really seen much coming in terms of the kind of support or the kind of consequence that can possibly possibly exist from the UN. Even what they're now declaring is against international law. So I want to then understand that given the current situation and in the way that things have escalated, why is it that what has happened previously and what has been continuing for so long wasn't really something that the UN really took note of? And then secondly, them declaring this total siege against international law, what value will that have, given the fact that Israel has, of course, carried that out in the past as well? It will just likely continue to do so since that has been the norm.
Sana, it is highly unfortunate that Israel has always been treated as if it's a favorite child, though it happens to be a very rude child, and the world takes no notice. When I say world, I only talk about the world that matters a lot in this world, and I'm talking about the Western world. Of course, they are powerful enough when it comes to narratives, and of course, they are powerful enough when they show their, they pick their sides. Of course, they always go towards Israel for certain reasons, and of course, them reasons are that Israel suits to them, and the rest of the Middle Eastern world, it does not suit them, including, I must say, North African states as well. Here, you earlier mentioned that, of course, the blockade, of course, it is against the international law. It is also against the Geneva Conventions. It is also against the United Nations resolutions. It is also against every resolution which was passed, including Oslo Accord as well. It is against them all, and Israel intentionally repeats itself when it comes to obviously not accepting all of them resolutions and keep on putting the pressure on Palestinian people and Gazan people. Of course, that is when we see that the outcry after outcry, it comes out of Gaza, it comes out of West Bank, and nobody listens to them. And for years and years, when they go through that kind of carnage under the brute force of the Israelis, they don't see any sort of cushion for their relief, and the only relief that comes into their mind that Hamas-like people, though there are only around 1,000 soldiers of Hamas, they entered in, and on behest of that, even the Western media is propagating against Gaza, the whole Gaza I'm talking about. How many miles is a stretch of Gaza? Only a small. Of course, there are millions of people living inside there. When there are millions of people living inside there, statistically speaking, 52% of the population is under 15. That means majority of them, they are kids, they are merely kids, and indiscriminate bombs, missiles, they are being fired by Israel daily, and the building after building is collapsing, and nobody is talking about in the Western media. Why? Because they have already shown a cherry-picked few of the clips which Hamas did. Hamas, 1,000 soldiers, obviously invested by a certain country, I'm talking about Iran. They did it, not the whole population of Gaza did it, not the whole population of West Bank did it. What about the Palestinians? What about the Palestinians? If few of them, around 1,000 people of them, they have resorted towards picking up the arms and of course defending themselves against the brute force of Israel, nobody is talking about the population at large of Gaza, population of the Palestine, but they are only talking about them 1,000 people. Them 1,000 people represent the resistance, the military resistance from the Palestinians, amongst the Palestinians. But they do not speak about the people who do not resort to that and who believe in dialogue. I'm talking about PLO. I'm talking about rest of the population of Palestine. They still believe that only dialogue is something that can obviously take us towards the peace between both of the states. And yes, when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan's stance has been and will be that we stand with Palestine, and of course we stand with the two-state solution. 1967 was the year when of course it was decided that it should be two-state solution, Jerusalem being the capital city of Palestine, and then any any establishment which were created by Israel in terms of dwellings, different dwellings, and of course they expanded within the Palestinian territory, they should be reversed. They should be handed back to people who belong. Of course Gaza, of course West Bank, people of Palestine, they own the land. But Israel never stopped itself. Israel even did not stop after Oslo Accord. I'm not saying it, even the Western politicians themselves. Go and check with whatever the statements are coming from the Irish Republic's politicians, especially the ones who are serving Ireland in EU's parliament.
Right,
they are shouting out loud that
Right.
it is Israel that does not do which is required to do when it comes to peace. It is Gaza that has been doing, but of course they have been facing the brute force at the hands of
Right, but at the same
Israel.
time, Faisal,
And
Israel hasn't faced anything. That's the
brute
point,
force
isn't
of Israel is forcing people of Gaza, forcing people of West Bank to take up the arms.
All right, Farrukh, given of course what is being discussed, especially in terms of how these are a certain group of people who are then impacting perhaps a larger population, I want to then understand that what Ambassador Saab also talked about in terms of the miraculous scenario where the Palestinians do get what they want, is this the kind of cost that one has to pay in order to get that, and is this something that can then be remembered in a triumphant way, that the Palestinians achieved what they were fighting for all this while, at the cost of such brutalities? And then also with regards to what Pakistan's stance or the international community stance for that matter should or should not be given the current situation. I understand that having a sort of proper stance in terms of what is going on and what we have backed up previously as well may perhaps be the right way forward in terms of keeping away and having a strictly calibrated stance. But I want to then understand whether that actually helps in de-escalating the current situation, whether that actually helps the people who are suffering the most, whether that actually helps what the larger population then has been hoping or fighting for in all this time.
Right, Sanam, first of all, regarding Pakistan's stance, we are sitting on PTV, which is state channel. We are citizens of Pakistan. So we have to actually adhere to Pakistan's state policy as well. And I think that in that spirit, I must point out that I am fully satisfied with the statements coming out of the Foreign Office of Pakistan. I think that Pakistan's response has been mature, it has been pro-peace, it has been calibrated and well thought out, right? Now, I consider Ambassador Saab as something of a teacher. I've learned a lot from him. I think my first appearance on television was in his program, where he was very gracious, and I kind of kept on crashing and burning, but he was very gracious. So I've learned a lot from his words, his on-air performance as well. I just wanted to correct a couple of things. First of all, I think that while he was speaking, he could refer to the UN, U.S. permanent representative in New York as Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley has retired, and these days Ambassador Linda Thomas Greenfield is the ambassador, right? I just wanted to correct the record. Regarding overall situation, I think that you have to appreciate the two nuances. One nuance, I understand that Gaza has been under siege for quite some time, but then, of course, the people who lay the siege are actually in control of what goes in and what goes out. At this moment, they have actually cranked up the pressure. That means nothing goes in, nothing goes out. That would include medicines, that would include food and other amenities, even fuel as well. So consider a place which is not only under siege for quite some time, but it is being pounded with bombs, and at that time You don't have the kind of medicines. Unlike Israel, Gaza doesn't have any bomb shelters, any safe zones. So people are really vulnerable, and common citizens must be actually killed and injured, and there's no supply or so any kind of medication available. So you have to appreciate that that nuance, that at this moment what is happening is further escalation, and it is harmful to the civilians who might not have anything to do with this kind of attack. Now Israel we know today is an apartheid state, and being an apartheid state, it has been actually treating and trying to treat people in different manners. First of all, when it comes to the first rate citizens, is its own Israeli Jewish population. Then second rate citizens are Arab Israelis. And the third rate citizens are because Israel functionally or practically is controlling the Arab areas as well, or has influence over the population. So they are the third rate citizens. Now how is that made possible? Faisal brought up Oslo Accord. You know what happened to the signatory of Israeli signatory of Oslo Accord? He was killed, right? Why was he killed? Because somebody called Benjamin Netanyahu kept on, spewing venom against him and asking for some kind of retaliatory attack, and eventually that man was killed. Today Israel is in such a state because Benjamin Netanyahu keeps on playing fast and loose with international order, human rights as well, and he keeps on using every escalation that is possible. And there is a process of baiting. For example, Al-Aqsa Mosque was mentioned earlier. So every time they want Hamas to attack, they have to send their forces or some kind of violent mob towards Aqsa. And then you have the barrage of Hamas rocket attacks, right. And then Israel actually uses that to then attack the population of Gaza, right? There's a difference between what PLO has been doing and what Hamas is doing. I think that no matter how desperate you are, attack on civilians cannot be condoned no matter what.
Right.
For example, when I understand you asked me to conclude, I will. Very quickly, let me also point out that Benjamin Netanyahu has been trying to change judicial system of Israel. But then you have to remember millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people who have come out protesting his abuses, right? So the people who were a part of this music festival which was attacked by Hamas, they were not people who were Benjamin Netanyahu's fan. You have to remember that when you attack civilian population, then it is clear that you are setting precedents which are going to harm the broader cause of Palestine. So I, with due respect, I don't agree with Ambassador Saab that it is not going to harm the Palestinian cause. I think that because of the media control that Faisal was mentioning, it will be portrayed as something horrible, and then it will play into Islamophobia. And by the way, one good thing that is there, Al Jazeera is on ground, and it is giving the other side of the story as well.
Right. Ambassador Saab, when we take a look at what is going on, of course, Iran has denied any involvement in the attacks, but of course has also talked about his support to the Palestinian cause. I want to understand whether, given the current scenario, this can be used as an excuse for Israel to escalate tensions with Iran or possibly attack them.
Thank you very much, Sana. To begin with, I'm grateful to Pitafi Saab for this correction, and he's absolutely right. The present, permanent representative of the United States in New York is Madame Linda Thomas Greenfield. Somehow I, mixed the two names because when I was in the Foreign Office, Linda Haley, I think in 2018 or something, she was the one. And since the present one is also a lady, but never mind this. The beauty of this debate is that you stand corrected, and I am really grateful to Pitafi Saab for correcting me. he was absolutely right. Now, second point that he says that, it is going to harm the Palestinian cause. I think if it was up to delivering very nice, good speeches in favor of the OIC resolutions or in favor of the United Nations, resolutions, I would have won Kashmir long time ago. Today's world is, the dynamics are different. The people have changed their mindset. Like, for instance, right now, full-fledged war is going on in the Middle East. But what about those, arms and ammunition making companies? How are they looking at it? And it's a big, big industry, one of the biggest industries in the world. How are they looking at it? And how is the United States looking at it and its obsolete, ammunition that it would like to shed? Talking about the Palestinian cause and saying that it is going to harm them, it has been going to, what was the, was there any option left for the people of, Palestine? Every now and then we would hear that, Gaza has been attacked and so many Palestinians have been died. Yes, there have been support from Qatar, Lebanon, Iran particularly, to their cause. But after the détente between KSA and Iran, and particularly KSA's normalization of relations with Israel, under that deal which is being brokered or which was being brokered by the United States of America, awaiting the approval of the Congress, I think they felt, absolutely alone. They felt alone because, and you can witness this. Where is the OIC? Out of those 56 members of OIC, many have already, established normal diplomatic relations, with Israel, including UAE, Egypt, Jordan, etc. So they knew, the people of Palestine, they knew. Please don't confuse Hamas, with the people of Palestine. They are Palestinians, but there are some differences somewhere, which tell me that this is somehow a planned thing. Only history will tell us, what exactly happened. But the way Israel was ready, the way that those statements, emanated from Tel Aviv so quickly, and the counterattack was so meticulously executed. I would not like to go into the, these conspiracy theories that Hamas was actually, forced to attack, Israel in that magnitude. But there is some kind of logic somewhere going on. And as far as Pakistan's stand is concerned, Pitafi Sahib is absolutely right. Pakistan's principled stand stays as such. The only difference is, as I said, that we have been careful and we have somehow learned how to, separate emotions from ground reality.
Right, absolutely. Very quickly, Ambassador Sahib, if you could also comment on Israel-Iran situation.
Israel-Iran situation, it is going to, escalate, of course. As Iran had already expressed its dissatisfaction over what was happening between KSA and Israel. And, all of us know that Iran has a soft corner or, some kind of latent support for Hamas. Of course, it's going to aggravate in the days and weeks.
What's the possibility of attack by Israel on Iran?
But attack by Israel on Iran, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because for that.
Thank you, Ambassador Saab. That's all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Thank you, Farrukh and Faisal. Unfortunately, we're out of time to talk about the other segment as well, where we were planning to focus on what is going on in the province of Balochistan and the Provincial Ethics Committee meeting that has talked about different projects that are underway and the way that different action plans are also in progress with regards to curbing terrorist and illegal activity in the province. But perhaps we can talk about this some other day and more details. That's all that we have from the show. We'll see you tomorrow.